welcome to Unearthly. In 1835, school headmaster James Newlove was clearing some farmland for a duck pond when his spade vanished into a void in the ground. To retrieve the spade, Newlove cautiously lowered his 6-year-old son Joshua into the crevice. But the boy returned with more than just a spade. He brought back a wild tale about a strange cavern studded with thousands and thousands of seashells. Newlove was amazed by this discovery and saw its potential, because he quickly bought the property and after renovating it for several months began charging visitors to come see this stunning work of art. Thus begins one of the popular accounts of the discovery of the shell grotto of Margate in Kent, England, though there are different versions of how it was discovered and by whom. The only thing definite about its discovery is the year, which is 1835, because that's the year that the earliest records of it mention. The seaside grotto contains over 4.6 million seashells, which cover almost every inch of the walls and roof. The shells here were all sourced locally and include starfish, mussels, whelks and scallops. These are arranged into beautiful mosaics such as stars, suns, circles and squares. The grotto has steps that lead down into a winding passage with an arch at the end. The passage splits into two around the rotunda, a round column as the name implies. These two passages join once again at the dome, which is actually a shaft covered with a skylight. Another arched doorway from the dome leads to a serpentine tunnel that ends in a mysterious room known as the altar chamber. A tiny niche in the wall is the altar, though no one knows how it was used. Once upon a time the shells were iridescent and colorful, but now all the shells are a dull white in color. The culprit for this is the gas lighting that was used for almost 100 years in the grotto. That's because the grotto had become a huge attraction in Victorian times before electric bulbs were used. And what's interesting is that due to its mysterious origins, Shell Grotto became popular for seances. Here's a picture of a seance that took place in more recent times in the 1930s. So who built Shell Grotto and for what purpose? It's a mystery, though there are plenty of origin theories. One theory is that it was built as an aristocrat's folly, which were popular in the 1700s. Follies were solid architectural buildings designed to look like a castle or a Roman temple and were entirely ornamental. Follies were enormously expensive to build. They were actually the height of luxury in those days. And follies didn't really serve any practical purpose, other than to perhaps show off. That's why these were known as a rich man's folly, as the word folly means lunacy or blunder. But in fairness to these aristocrats, many follies were commissioned during times of famine in order to give poor people a chance to earn money by working on something. Here are some pictures of follies built during this time. So was Shell Grotto built as a folly? This raises more questions than answers. As we've seen, the earliest records of Margate Grotto are from 1835 and no records of it prior to this exist. So if it was indeed built in the 1700s, is it possible that it was 100% forgotten by the time it was discovered in 1835? 4.5 million shells had to be gathered and then sorted according to shape and size for creating the mosaics on the walls. This would have taken an enormous amount of manpower and effort. And even before the decoration, the actual construction of the underground grotto, digging out the tunnels and building the walls and doorways would have needed a lot of labor. How could all this work on an open field have escaped the attention of other people? When discovered, the folly lay beneath a farm. Shell Grotto was never part of an aristocrat's property. So why would a rich man build a folly beneath someone else's farmland? Other follies were always built in the garden and deliberately conspicuous and ostentatious, since they were created for the ultimate bragging rights. And they were also purely ornamental. Unlike these, Margate Grotto was built entirely underground and also has an altar chamber. So was this grotto a mere folly or a secret place used for rituals? Most follies were built in the 1700s, which is also the worst possible time to be a witch. So other origin theories are that due to the grotto's cryptic underground nature, it was a den for witches. If so, it would have been the perfect location for witches to practice witchcraft in. It was hidden away from prying eyes and danger at a time when women were burnt at the stake for practicing witchcraft. Could it have been built by the Phoenicians, Some people believe that it might have been built by the Phoenicians around the second half of the first millennium BC. The Phoenicians were a seafaring people who actually started several colonies in the UK, so there might be some truth to it. The Phoenicians were also sun worshippers, just like many ancient cultures throughout the world. Some researchers wondered whether sun worship was practiced at Shell Grotto. They actually put this idea to test and discovered something astonishing. On the exact day of the summer solstice, the sun shines into the skylight of the dome at Margate Grotto. They used a reflector instead of the sun since the passage is blocked due to modern updates. So, could this point to a connection to the Phoenicians? But the most mind-blowing possible connection points to ancient Rome, with the very founding of the city of Rome. In November 2007, archaeologists in Italy unveiled an ancient subterranean grotto said to have been a sacred site for ancient Romans. The Romans considered this place sacred because they believed that this was where a wolf nursed the legendary founding twins of Rome, Romulus and Remus. The Shell Grotto bears a striking similarity to this ancient sacred grotto of Rome. Yet another theory is that it served as an astronomical calendar and was built by the Knights Templar. Well, it seems you can't have any historical mystery without the Knights Templar being involved somehow. One of the clues to its likely origin lies in the doorways. They're distinctly Gothic in style, and this was very much in vogue during the time when follies were constructed. This points to a more recent origin. To solve its origin issue once and for all, we need to figure out when it was built. One surefire way of dating it would be to take out some of the shells and carbon date them. Then why is no one doing this? The shells cannot be carbon dated due to the fact that a massive number of them are needed for carbon dating. And also because they were viewed by thousands of people over a century, it is likely that some of them might have been replaced due to damage. To ensure that later replacements don't get in the way of the original shells, an enormous amount of them would need to be removed and then carbon dated. This right now is very expensive, and there are other more important issues having to do with the very preservation of the grotto. So there are many theories as to who built the grotto. Despite all these different origin tales, the only explanation that makes sense is that it was a rich man's folly. But for many people, the mystery still lingers as to who actually built it, as they say the results are inconclusive when it comes to it being an aristocrat's folly. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please subscribe, share and like.